Hey, okay. Welcome everyone to Collab Lab Tech Talk. And this week I am super duper excited to have Jordan with us. And his topic is going to be creative coding, or, and I love this title, how making music taught me almost everything I need to know about code. And I personally think this is a super cool topic, and I'm really excited to hear what Jordan has to say. And just a few housekeeping measures, which are just that these talks are recorded and posted to YouTube. Links to the recordings will be made available on the meetup page. Right there's the link to the meetup page, and a lot of you probably made it here because of that, so may know where it is already. Also, we do have a code of conduct here at the Collab Lab, and so if you haven't already, please familiarize yourself with it and let us know if there's anything that seems abnormal or anything like that. And if you have the time and the means, to always welcome people to contribute to the Collab Lab. That could be money or time or giving a tech talk like Jordan is here. Collab Lab is a nonprofit organization that helps early career engineers gain real world coding experience and working on actual software teams and building a product and learning the collaboration skills that are very important in today's world as an engineer. So with that, I will pass this along to Jordan.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. Again, I really appreciate you and your support and that of the Collab Lab, as well as all my friends and colleagues at Alchemy Code Lab, those coming from Epicodus and other places I've been fortunate enough to work, PCC or Portland Community College. I'll talk about all of that here in just a moment. As soon as I actually get these slides up and ready to go. One thing I haven't done before is presented from Canva. So that part's going to be a little bit new, and I could hit some weird bumps that I'm not ready for yet, but we're going to find out. We're going to see what happens. Let's see here.
Bumps always make things interesting and fun.
Yeah, I wanted to try something new. Apparently I always do and can't just use something I've used successfully in the past. It's just not for me to do that. So otherwise I wouldn't be coding, I guess. All right, thanks for bearing with me. Let's check this out. All right, cool. Can everybody see this tiny little audience window? All clear there? Right on. All right, thanks y'all. Again, thank you all so much for being here, and thanks for being patient while I get things all set up. As Mike mentioned, this is creative coding, or how making music taught me, barring the parentheses, everything I needed to know about code. I've been working on this presentation for a while now, and I only knew about it maybe 2 months ago, but I've probably been working on it for 10 years. I would say it's something that is very near and dear to my heart, to talk about the ways that we learn and experience the world, and I as an artist and an educator and now a developer, wanted to find a way to talk about all of those experiences. Well, I guess I've tried many times to talk about those experiences separately and could never find a way. So I'm just trying now to roll those things up and bundle them neatly together as well as I can and shove it into 45 minutes or an hour. So I'm going to do my best with that. Secondly, I gave this presentation this very incendiary sort of title because I love to find out that I'm wrong. I love being wrong. I love it so much, in fact, that I sometimes pretend to live in this perpetual state of being wrong about everything all the time. It means that I'm going to get all these opportunities to learn. It doesn't really work wonders for depression, but you know, I get to learn every day. I get to learn something new by just putting myself out there. And if I'm wrong, that's okay. In certain cases, anyway, you know, there are places to fail safely and to need to practice and study to get things right. But for me, I love opportunities to fail safely and to get to learn and to be wrong about something. I say opportunity, I get to do that all the time. I find that I do my best learning too when I'm wrong about something, and then when I have someone in my corner to nudge me in the right direction. You also make lots of new friends being wrong. People who are not my friends yet love it when I'm wrong, as it turns out. Just to share on that a little bit, someone recently posted this meme in the Alchemy Slack, and I couldn't find anything more relatable than this. Just to read it aloud here. Every time I have a programming question and I really need help, I post it on Reddit and then log into another account and reply to it with an obscenely incorrect answer. People don't care about helping others, but they love correcting others. Works 100% of the time. And well, that's very sort of skeptical and sort of, yeah, I guess a bit of a skeptical way to look at it. I think that there's a very different lens that we can apply to this phenomenon when we see that there's something, and I should credit Paul, who posted in the Slack with a response that was very thoughtful to this exact meme here. There's a sort of phenomenon by which when we as humans spot something that is obviously and egregiously incorrect or inconsistent with what we understand, we want to step in to remedy that. So there's another sort of lens for looking at this, and I definitely have found that that's true, especially practicing being wrong, because I wasn't always good at that. I found myself in constant states of analysis paralysis over the years, and especially working as an artist, that doesn't get you very far. You can try to create something and create something really lovely, but if you don't perfect it, and you never will, you'll never finish anything. So anyhow, starting off with a tangent, you might be asking at this point, now, Jordan, if you're wrong all the time, why should I be listening to you right now? And I'm going to stop you at now, Jordan, and talk a little bit about myself. So this is me. This is my big goofy face over here on the right. I am a full stack software developer and educator in Portland, Oregon, who is striving to make people-friendly and highly accessible tools and technology. I am also a recent coding bootcamp graduate, as I mentioned, coming from Alchemy Collab. I just finished that program at the end of April last month. So here I am now on the job search, likely with many of you who might also be coming from the coding bootcamp experience or starting a program like the Collab Lab to get more practice in, or starting your internships. All these lovely opportunities now for us that are available that have emerged in the past decade or so, to get our hands on learning software development. So I started that program at the end of September last year, finished up at the end of April, and now I'm probably just beginning my coding journey, I guess. No, absolutely not. I've been doing this a really long time. And if you read the abstract for this presentation and already knew that was going to be the answer, that's great. Thanks for dealing with my obvious bit there. I've been coding or adjacent to code, I'll say code adjacent, for about 6 years, kind of circling the drain of things I loved doing that wouldn't necessarily involve spending all of my time on the computer, because I don't love spending all of my time looking at the monitor. I don't always have so many lovely, wonderful faces and boxes with names to look at. So it's not great all the time. I love being outside and getting to go for walks and gardening and working with my plants here that don't want anything to do with my screens. There's so much to do except beyond coding, and I was always kind of scared off from coding professionally because I thought that was going to mean spending my nights and weekends coding as well as my weekdays. As it turns out, I really like doing my nights and weekends, but not my weekdays so much. Found that out for 7 months. So I'm maybe I belong in freelance or something. I'm not sure yet. We're going to find out. So all of that, but in the summer of 2021, I decided to go full time with code because I do love the practice of getting to code. It's something that I get to learn from all the time. I'm always constantly learning something new. There's no way to be bored when you're coding, unless you don't code. If you just kind of look at documentation and never write any code, yeah, you're going to be super bored. But that's not coding. That's just reading documentation. And it's still learning, and that's cool. But I digress. I'm going to need to do a lot of that. Now, having just finished Alchemy, take a quick look at a couple of coding projects that I got to work on. For those who are not familiar, maybe with the coding bootcamp environment, that's a 6-month program. Alchemy, at least, many others have varying lengths, but it's a 6-month program that was 9 to 6, 5 days a week for 6 to 7 months, and it was a tremendous, fun, collaborative opportunity. A lot of successes and failures sort of along the way with creating these group projects. Each of our 4 sort of modules ended in a group project that we got to build out on a team of 4. And so this was the last and most recent one for me, and the most relevant to this presentation because it really felt like such an opportunity to get to work on something that was a convergence of all of the skills I had gotten to build up, not only over those 7 months of Alchemy, but also learning music from the time that I was plucking around on a guitar and learning my first chords, probably 17 years ago now. Getting to apply those things that I learned back then, and even things that I learned prior to that, about shapes, about basic geometry, about these sort of accessibility features, even just the manner in which this thing is interactive and creates sounds. Now, there's not any sound playing, of course, because this is just a GIF, and that would be really annoying. But this app is one that I'm really proud of and really enjoyed getting to make with such a wonderful team. As a quick understanding of what is going on, this is a musical sequencer, and one that runs in the web that we built to be accessible, to have these shapes and colors and eventually textures. We want to implement all sorts of ways for this to be playable by non-musicians. That is, people who wouldn't classify themselves as a musician, whether or not they know how to make music, because most of us do. It's pretty inherent for us to be able to sing and project and to make sounds and rhythms. I view everyone as an artist and a creator, as long as they're willing to try and to get out there and create something. I'll talk a little bit more about that and try my best to not get sidetracked. I'm really not good at that. So again, I'll appreciate you bearing with me. The sequencer has 3 different instruments and any number of channels. There's volume, there's reverb, there's this little joystick controller on the side that can be used to add effects like delay and bit crushing. And it plays as many channels as the web can kind of handle at once. If you know anything about working with audio and JavaScript, you also know that single threading a bunch of simultaneous sounds can be kind of a nightmare. We avoided a lot of that in this project by very carefully building out constraints by which a user could come in and try to run so many sounds at once. We implemented all of this with React and have a full Node backend that uses Express for routing through the app. There's a PostgreSQL database that stores user projects, including the project's BPM, all of the notes that get stored, and can display all of your projects on a page. So you can go in and this sort of acts like a bit like a DAW or a digital audio workstation. Again, just a tremendous amount of fun to work on, and something that definitely wouldn't have been possible in my coding journey if not for all of the time that I spent making music. Adjacent to that, there's some of the other projects, and I got to work a lot with maps, with, again, houseplants, all of these things that I really cherished. None of these projects were anything that I got into because I just needed something to work on. They were all passion projects in some way because I wanted to work with either the technology or the practice of making more accessible something to people, especially with maps. You can see 2 of these sort of work with locations, and both Scrounger and Friends.map, which were tremendously fun to work on. So I mentioned this term a little while ago, and I just made it up today. I don't know that anyone ever says this. Code adjacent is a term that I use to describe most of the work that I have done up until September of last year. I did get a chance to do quite a lot of coding in the past. As I mentioned, I've been sort of working with or around code for 6 or 7 years now, maybe longer if you count working with HTML and CSS on MySpace, right? Like way back. I don't remember any of that, but it's all still up there somewhere. And I truly want to give a shout out to Tom from MySpace for giving me those early opportunities, and for sticking around as my #1 friend for a long time. This is an example of projects that I would call code adjacent. While all of them involved some amount of code or interaction or interfacing with code, in many cases, I didn't have to write a single line of code myself, or provide any at all to the systems that are responsible for these products. And some of you also got to work with me on some of these projects, and I'm really happy to give a shout out to my friend Mikey, who's here, who got to work with me on many of these. maybe all in some capacity, and provided a lot of support. And yeah, it was just an honor to work with. There are quite a lot of things going on here, and I'll talk about what these are very shortly, but I just wanted to give an overview of some of what I've been working on for a long time now. Cool, 15 minutes in, I'm going to talk about what this presentation is and what it isn't. Here we are. I've already sort of covered part one a little bit here, and I'm going to start with really just the sort of what this is that's on the left, and I'll get to the stuff in blue right after that. This presentation is about me, my experiences learning to code through music making. It's a conceptual introduction to the practice of creative coding. It's a look at some of the software that's frequently used in creative coding. It's about learning how to learn, and it is optionally, I can't stress this enough, optionally participatory. There are a couple of questions to jump in on. I had created something as a small group activity, but I don't want to do that because nothing scares off a room full of people in Zoom like the words group activity. I think I might have even lost somebody already. It's hard to know. Wasn't keeping track. Breakout rooms make me turn off my camera and scream into the void and not come back sometimes. Sometimes I stick around, but I think that that's one thing that I learned from 2 years of teaching on Zoom is that with that easy out, if I'm not told that there's going to be a group activity beforehand in the description, when it's the right time to tell someone, I run. I'm out. So I really like to stress that because it's important to me that you all feel encouraged but never required to participate, because you could be doing anything right now. You could be hanging up laundry, washing dishes, just tuning in on your phone. That's all cool. I want to just appreciate you being here. With that all in mind, I said this is about me. It's not really. I am going to say a lot about my experiences, but it's actually about you and your experiences. What I wanted to bring this presentation to everyone for is to sort of look at your past experiences, much like mine in making music, and see what you can learn from them, to see what you can extract from anything that you've ever done, even if you thought maybe it was a waste of time, maybe you thought that you should have been doing something else sooner. I certainly have had many occasions where I've told myself I really should have started coding 10 years ago, or I should have gone to university for this or that. And I don't mean to say this in a sort of like no regrets sense, because I totally regret not actually doing a lot of that stuff sooner. But at the same time, I don't know what that would have looked like. I don't have an opportunity to go back and see what would have happened in the future where I didn't do that. And it's really rad to get to talk about all of this right now and to get to reflect on it and be appreciative, be in a place where I'm finally enjoying all of the work that I'm getting to do as a developer, as an educator, and as an artist. Again, I certainly couldn't have imagined a lot of those projects that I got to work on and what they would have looked like or whether they would have existed if I had not ended up going this route. And I hope that you can all look at some of your experiences that way too. I don't mean to be, I won't be preachy in that sense. I've definitely wasted some time too, but most of the time I can look back on it and find out, or I'll find out later that maybe this was actually a really useful experience. And this is how I'm going to apply it to what I am working on now. So there's also the conceptual introduction to creative coding. And I want to talk about how it differs from conventional coding. That said, it's not a technical deep dive into creative coding. I'm not going to jump into any of the software at length. I will probably take a quick look at some of the pieces that I've used and talk about some others. I'll have to provide a list I will provide a list following the presentation of some of the software that I've been involved with for a long time or had sort of dabbled in. I love encouraging other people to get into creative coding and want to find the right one for you to get to explore that side of your development, if that's something that you're interested in as an artist, or if you're a developer looking to start making some art for the first time. Plenty of opportunities there. And on the note of learning how to learn, if you, like me, are also a recent coding bootcamp graduate or had participated in one, you might be really tired of hearing that expression, either from your peers or from yourself over and over every time that you forget something and have to look it up on the internet. And that's okay. I want to encourage you to feel that that's a good feeling to have, is learning how to learn. But I also want to do this in a really reflective way, not just absorbing new information, but processing old information, thinking about the experiences that we've had in the past, and again, really extracting what they're worth from our past and how we can invest in them now. All right. Story time, but first, I want to ask if there are any pressing questions at the moment, or if, yeah, I guess if anybody has any questions, just want to take a quick pause for that.
And if anyone wants to be able to unmute or anything like that, just raise your hand or throw something in the chat at any point. Oh, yeah, the chat. Give me a sec. I should be looking at that too. Yes, Mike, thank you. There is some really good documentation out there. I just want to put that out too, because actually, I didn't mean to diss on it. I love reading documentation. That's the kind of person I am, I guess, for whatever that's worth. But good documentation. I'm not going to call any names out, but there's some software that I use that, some software that I love. Could use a little stronger, use some technical writers, I think, or non-technical writers. I don't know, some creative fiction writers or something on their teams. And cool, Angela, thank you for that too. Tech adjacent, totally makes sense. It's a wonderful way of combining those terms. All right, right on. I'm going to press on and tell a couple of quick stories here. I dropped out of college twice, pursuing music and music education, because I really enjoyed teaching and I knew how to play an instrument. That was definitely not enough when I was 18. And I found that out pretty quickly at the university that I was at. I had not been classically trained on anything. I wasn't going to be able to join their orchestra or symphony team. I joined their choir and maybe sang for the first time in my adult life as a part of that. And that was a really lovely experience, even though I couldn't harmonize particularly well. I could plug my ear and listen to the person next to me and trust that they were right, as long as one or both of us weren't being corrected. I was really fortunate to learn at that time that I had an ear for picking out pitch, for deciphering and understanding pitch. Not perfect pitch by any means, but it was something that was going to help me a lot moving forward as a musician. In any case, I tried that out in college and ultimately failed big time. I failed a lot. I blew a lot of money taking out student loans, the story of a generation.
and decided to follow my dreams and start making pizza instead, where I met some of you. And I'm so fortunate for that, actually, because it really did change my life to have that experience of working in the places that I did. Pizza life. Around that time that I dropped out of school, my best friend and I, who made music together regularly or talked about it quite often, moved to Portland in 2011. We're from Southern Kentucky, in a place called Russellville, that I'm going to assume no one's ever been to. And when he moved out here, I followed it pretty immediately, because I came to Portland to check it out, and we kept talking about making music together, and that seemed fantastic. I moved out here and started playing guitar, playing open mic nights, things like that around 2013, 2014, and finally got the nerve to start doing things like open mics, usually alternating between originals and cover songs. And I'll talk about why that's important in a little bit. From there, I got into a program at PCC. I finally decided after about 5 years that going back to school was going to be a part of learning to improve my musicality and my understanding of music. I decided I still wanted to teach. I still wanted to get into that experience, because I had, again, taught many friends how to play guitar, taught a little bit of music theory early on. I guess I'd always been teaching, whether it was dealing, oh, thank you so much, Mike. Yes, Portland Community College, that is PCC. I try to avoid acronyms, and haven't done a good job so far, but I'll do my best. And yeah, please feel free to plug me if I do forget one. That's no problem. Thank you, Mike. I started at Portland Community College in the fall of 2015, again, to pursue education. I decided I was finally going to go through with that. And there happened to be this really cool music class that was also on at the same time. I thought I'd start slow and get into education with my first class, and then pick up some steam from there. And I'm just going to take some music class on the side. This is the result of that. 2 classes, and intro to education did not go well for me. They still let me have the job years later, but it wasn't great. I was still kind of slacking, and really just wasn't interested in a lot of what we were learning. It was quite a great deal about the history of education exclusively in the United States, of Western education, and I don't know, I was bored. So I failed that class failed it pretty thoroughly. But music and computers, this class was sick. I loved it. Probably actually the reason that I failed my other class, because this was so much more compelling to be making music away from my guitar for the first time, to just get on my screen and start doing something other than video games. I was working in a program called Ableton Live, which I'll talk about in a moment. But I pulled this particular picture up because I found actually in these classes and in the titles alone, I found it interesting that this was going to be my life for at least the next 7 years, to be encapsulated in these 2 courses. Again, I spent many years as an educator and as a musician, and now I spend most of my time on my computer, or I'm developing a career around it. So stumbling on this as I was reviewing my transcript recently was kind of a special moment, I guess. Here's the tech, at least step 1. Music and computers was a class that involved Ableton Live, which is a DAW or digital audio workstation. And I will put that in the chat. DAW, a digital audio workstation. So this meant a piece of software that I could use to create and record and produce music entirely without ever using an actual musical instrument. It uses a very well-known musical convention, digital music convention called MIDI, or Musical Instrument Digital Interface. And this is a 7-bit number, 8-bit signed integer, I think. Values between 0 and 127 or 128 exactly, which you can get with 7 digits. And I think there's also negative MIDI values, but been away from my DAW for a little while. It's the first thing I learned about reading bits and bytes, and understanding why those values were important were not really relevant to what I was doing in Ableton. You can get away with a lot without ever knowing how to read in binary, but I thought it was cool. I just was always curious about why MIDI always used these values between 0 and 127. Like, where's the logic in that? As it turns out, the logic is deeply rooted and in our systems by which we turn on and off logic gates, that we have all these pieces of technology that rely on the same fundamental units to send and pass signals. This is important because it would also be my introduction, or the tool that I used to start understanding analog modular synthesis, which was the first class that I taught at Portland Community College. After having been a student of this class about 3 years prior, I started to invest a lot of my time in modular synthesis. It changed the way that I played and perceived music from there on. And it also introduced me to logic concepts like and or not NAND gates, because I was able to start using things like this in these systems when patching out generative music or algorithmic music. These are terms you might be a little bit more familiar with, right? If you're just a developer coming into this and have no concept of music, creating music algorithmically is a practice in creative coding that's quite common. Then I got into video game music because that's really where this all started. Probably when I was like 4 and playing Mega Man for the first time. Songs that are still looping in my head to this day. I fell in love with video game music. I got to teach 2 video game music classes, game audio design and composition. And as it turned out, those involved a lot more coding than it did making music for me. And that's not the story of everyone in those fields, but it happens to be at this time definitely something that that you can spend most of your hours coding or generating music this way. This is a Famine Tracker, by the way. Yeah, it is a type of mod tracker software. I don't think it's particularly well supported right now. But it was the first thing that I used to write music that could work on an NES cartridge. And it stays true to those sounds by using 2 square waves, a triangle wave, or I should say 2 pulse channels, triangle wave noise, and a DPCM channel. I'm not going to try to remember what that is right now, even though I've taught it many times. Cool. Here's a post point for optional participation. I just want to ask, when have you failed at something you loved to do? if you'd like to put an answer in the chat, I would love to know. I will share, by the way. You don't all have to just put yourselves out there. I'm kind of, I'm spilling it all here. So I'm just interested to hear from you all. If there's an activity or a career even that something that you really enjoyed doing and you found that you failed quite badly at it, even once. Any takers? Cool. Also an artist and quit my job to pursue that, but ran out of money relatively quickly. And to be the only time that you run art shows, yeah, I feel that. Thank you for sharing. Last out of the water in my first triathlon. Well, and when I started building sales funnels, I failed hundreds of times before I got one that converted. Cool. I don't even know what sales funnels are, and I've got to go find out. Love building those. They're fun to plan and put together. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna check it out. Cool. Thank you all for sharing in the chat there. I really do appreciate it. For me, I feel like I failed music, which is pretty colossal to say, but in the midst of taking all these classes at Portland Community College, I had started to really fall out from playing guitar and participating as a singer-songwriter because I started to realize that I was not remembering lyrics. I started struggling to remember the lyrics to my own songs, to music I had worked on and practiced. And no matter how much effort I put into it, I really struggled with that. And so I bailed on a pretty big show, on an opportunity to play a live performance. And that was definitely a devastating blow to my own personal morale and to, well, this person who trusted me to put on the performance. And I kept going. I gave up on it that night, and it took me a few weeks to really start playing music again. But when I got back into it, it was really those sort of three things that brought me back. I was really invested in now making music in a way that wasn't familiar to me. I didn't need lyrics to write music on an analog modular synthesizer. I could generate music dynamically. If I were making video game music, it's all recorded, it's all being processed, and there's adaptive audio, which is this entire field of audio that's happening interactively. And I was so fascinated by that. Same thing in Ableton Live. So these things really helped me kind of pull through that. And from there, I got to explore a lot of other classes. Again, I got involved in this program called Music and Sonic Arts program at Portland Community College. And I got involved at a time where these classes under the umbrella of creative coding started to emerge. They were all, right when I started, music adjacent, and began with MaxMSP, a class in audio programming, which down there on the bottom right is an example of a patch from Max that I got to work on. From there, I got to branch out into processing 3 and do visual art purely with code. Now, MaxMSP is a visual programming language. I'll talk about what that means in a moment. I didn't actually have to write any lines of code in an IDE to produce audio or visual content with Max, but processing 3 required learning just a bit of Java, just enough to kind of produce some cool stuff on the screen. And it was a blast. I got to take classes in these and start investing myself in that software, and then into microcontrollers, which you can see down on the bottom left. That involved more coding and gave me a physical, tangible thing to start interacting with. It involves, in this case, using an Arduino or a Teensy or a Raspberry Pi. Maybe you've heard of any of those little controllers if you've worked on any kind of interactive element, or maybe even just something for your house. They're wonderfully versatile little tools, essentially tiny computers that can run small amounts of code to power just about anything. What this led to also were art installations. I got to work with these wonderful teams to produce projects that were much grander than anything that I got to work on my own. Project Zero, which was one of our creative coding capstone pieces at Portland Community College, involved building this giant, beautiful dome, doing projection mapping, visuals, live audio with 32 speakers around the system, and that was put on at Disjecta. And back in 2018. The next year, I got to collaborate with the next group of creative coding capstone students on that. I also got involved in laser cutting and 3D modeling and 3D printing, game design, CAD or computer-aided design. All of these things were a result of wanting to learn how to make more music and stumbling through these little roadblocks, still making music through that process, and focusing most of my design on making music just in a new way, with a new tool, with a new interface, and if not making music, then aiding what I was doing musically. And all of this sort of ended up consuming my life and my musical endeavors. And this is what I would call creative coding. As I said, I really wanted to find that, but I'm curious to know from any of you what the difference might be between creative coding and conventional coding, or what makes creative coding distinct from coding. If anyone's got a brief in the chat. I knew I was going to start running out of time before I got here to present some of the technology, but I'll make sure to share any. I don't think I'll have any leftover slides or anything like that. Might just have to make room for questions. Cool. Code that's not copied. It doesn't necessarily have profit-based motives. Cool. I haven't even thought about it that way. Code that isn't practical. Cool. Oh, thank you. Let's make that poll, and pretty quickly forgot about it. If you haven't heard of creative coding, good. Now's your chance. Get to learn a little bit about it. It seems like its application is very customized, maybe. Cool. I like all of that. I think it all works in some way. I had a really hard time defining it, because what I found for myself was two definitions, and both of them were counter to each other. And they also happen to be the first two lines on the Wikipedia page of creative coding. Coding that is not, which purpose is self-expressive and not functional, something along those lines. I hated that. I thought it totally sucked in terms of a definition, because art is extremely functional and self-expression is functional, as functional as we can get. And I say this as someone who's, again, an artist who is mostly involved in the educational space, who has studied the revolutionary practice of music, so music that's written as part of a political statement, a statement to, well, really to have a platform, to get to say something and present it in a way that is unique and is really expressive of our own beliefs in a way that people will enjoy or digest or process in a way that's quite different than if we just said out loud the lyrics of our song. Now, that's not the only case. Of course, poetry, we have art, we have forms of art that are as vast and wide as there are surfaces on the planet and materials through which to affect those surfaces, or to affect the sound waves that we have. So for me, creative coding was hard to define because really what it came down to every time that I tried to come back to it was it's code that serves a purpose that may not necessarily be tangible, that may not result in the completion of a task. We may not see it through to its end. It may only be setting the stage for a task to be complete. There's no one single goalpost. We just want to present something and maybe stir the thoughts of others or motivate someone to understand our expression. With creative coding, I want to mention some, and the time that we have left, mention some of the software that ultimately taught me what I needed to start understanding to get into code, into web development. MaxMSP Jitter is the first one that I was exposed to, the first what I would call a piece of software specific to creative coding. It's a visual programming language and environment for music and multimedia that's often associated with interactive installations, algorithmic composition and performance. It uses files that are called patchers, and patchers are populated by objects. So it's an object-oriented programming language. And each of these objects send and receive various signals. If it sounds like these are kind of familiar terms to you as a developer, awesome. This really is just a different way of looking at and experiencing the way that we write code. Purely visual, you're connecting these objects through cables. There are different types of data, sort of really three, I would call core data types or signal types. But all of the data that you know and love from classic development is there. Numbers, integers, floating point, numbers, characters, strings. You can make variables. You can use if-else statements. They're super clunky. Their syntax is crazy, or at least it was to me 7 years ago, and now it all sort of started coming together. I like the sound of MaxMSP. That definitely, that one hits. So this program got me involved in code without actually having to write lines of code, because I could just write small bits of things like metro, a number I would start to understand later. This is a metronome that is running at this this speed. I can give it a tempo of a certain BPM. I have a counter that's counting up from 0 to 127, or giving me a full range of MIDI values. I have controls and interfaces, and really what I found with MaxMSP is that what I wanted to do was create user interfaces more often than I wanted to create music. I decided I wanted to make tools for other people to make music with. I ended up creating a lot of keyboard synths, a lot of touch controlled. So I had a touch screen laptop at the time that users could interact with and press buttons on the screen to actually produce music. But that was my introduction to not just a creative way of doing this, but it was clearly functional. Using a creative coding piece of software to make something to teach with, or to make a tool by which others can use and employ to make their own music. Now, no mention of Max is complete without a shared space for pure data. Its open source counterpart, also developed by Miller Puckett, who is the author of Max. And both function similarly enough that learning one benefits us in the use of the other. You can kind of see some of their really similar patterns. What I love about Pure Data, again, is that it's open source and it's free. You can run it on Raspberry Pis. You can run it from just about any kind of computer that you want on Linux-based systems, which MaxMSP don't support. And because it has a full open source community behind it, it's got everything that you could possibly need, sans a really beautiful default graphical user interface. And that's okay. Mike, I do want to ask, as we are approaching the last minute before 6 o'clock, I've only got a few more slides left. What's the usual process?
Yeah, how much more time do you think you've got?
Tops 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Yeah.
I mean, everyone is welcome to hang out for another 5 minutes. Nobody's forcing you to be here. So if you want to take off, you can, but yeah, so keep on going.
Cool.
Yeah, and 5 minutes of gold.
Thank you, Stacey. And those 5 minutes will be at the end of the recording. So if you do have to leave, I want to respect any time you dedicated to dropping in today. Go ahead and give you thanks for that. And I'll leave my contact information at the end. Not my personal phone number, but maybe my email and a few responsible things to share on YouTube. Another piece of software that I mentioned is processing. So processing is a free and open source graphical library and integrated development environment, or IDE, built by Ben Fry and Casey Reese, with the intention of teaching programming to learners in a visual context. The files are called sketches. These use Java as a core language, but there's additional support or wrappers available for Python or Ruby or Scala. Java is, again, the language that I learned first with this piece of software. I actually had taken a class in Python and still decided to learn Java for this. I was very scared of Python at the time, even though I love to use it now. This is a programming language that gives visual art a real, I guess, is the powerhouse for providing visual art. Things like projection mapping. A user might take a projector and display on a surface like a geodesic dome various shapes, colors, patterns. This, again, is Project Zero. Mikey posted in the chat a video if you want to take a look of Project Zero, our first group installation with the creative coding capstone at Portland Community College. And again, maybe it was the first solid, I don't know, lines of code that I enjoyed writing. It made creating visuals very simple and straightforward relative to what I imagined they would be and what I was right about in JavaScript. Thankfully, though, P5.js came along, and this is something I've gotten to use several times now as a web developer, as well as in my educational experience building out sites for WordPress, where I was able to import some raw HTML and JavaScript into my files. So P5.js is a library that has the official support of Processing Foundation. It runs very similarly to processing. It's just a native JavaScript alternative. So it runs in the browser rather than having its own IDE, and it empowers developers to leverage their artistry on the web and on mobile devices, which was something that many of us on processing in our processing classes wanted to take up, programming visuals for mobile. I would encourage anyone who's interested, who's already a JavaScript developer, to look into P5, as well as libraries like 3JS. A lot of these didn't get a slide of their own, but I will likely add several slides to this, make sure that I share it with any of you who reaches out with some examples from other programs. Those include visual programming languages like Scratch and Touch Designer. Scratch largely for making video games or small interactive pieces. It's a great educational tool for kids. And things like Touch Designer for more audiovisual opportunities. Cool, I promised about 5 minutes. And what I want to do here is jump ahead a few. I'm a little bummed about not getting to check into this question, but I'm really hoping that all of you will Anyone who wants to reach out and connect, is interested in creative coding or exploring more of this realm with me, we'll connect over GitHub, LinkedIn. Again, I'll try to put my email in this in the chat. Angela, that last one is Scratch. And I also encourage, I think Scratch is a great way to get started with game development. I also encourage using Unity or Unreal Engine, both of which now have their own fully supported visual programming interfaces and are really kind of all that you need to build out full video games by yourself or as part of a team. So that's really kind of a lovely opportunity to get started, though, is with game logic is in Scratch, or to teach someone else to do so. So I'll hope I get a chance to ask some of you what is something that you've made and how you identify with those past experiences. Quick cover of these lessons that I got out of making music. And these are kind of deeply personal lessons for me, but things that I just found myself repeating as I got through Alchemy and was working with peers who were maybe learning to code for the first time. When I had these years of experience that I was very lucky to get. Covers are fine, but people want to hear your music. Someone told this to me at Habisha Lounge back in 2014. May it rest in peace. And the point I want to stress is that anyone can do what's already been done. You can follow tutorials to your heart's desire and make all kinds of wonderful clones of the software out there, but only you or someone you know who you trust can make something personally meaningful that tells your story. You can even start with the skills that you have or that you want to learn right now. Pro tip, tutorial hell is a real place. Don't go there. Lesson 2, you can play all the instruments, but you don't have to be the whole band. You can't, actually, if you want to perform live as it goes. Conversation between a friend and I. Developing full stack is rad. It's not the only way forward. You can be a part of a team. And some of the most wonderful creative work and functional work, if you prefer, will be done as part of a team by sharing skills and giving what you have as a contributor to the rest of those with you. Last one I've got for now. It may be hard at this moment, but trust me, keep at it. One day it will just stick. I was told that every time I tried to learn bar chords for about 2 years. I don't know how many times I heard it, but it was right. They were right. Practicing is a crucial step, not to perfection, but to practice better. And eventually bar chords and if statements and the right distance to keep from a surface while spray painting and to not pollute the air around yourself. All of that stuck. All of it made sense in due time. And I'm really grateful for those lessons that I got to learn along the way, and hope that you'll take a chance to pluck some of those own lessons from your own past experiences and now apply them to yourself as a developer or as a developer learning to be an artist. Maybe you'll apply it to your art from here on. Take what you can, take what you will, and leave the rest. I'm just one person sharing my experiences, but what I'm most excited about is learning from learning from your experiences, and maybe all of us sharing those together. Cool. I totally left my email off this slide, but I'll put it up there and in a moment, and or in the chat here. Actually, that's what I'll do. If you'd like to reach out to me, there I am. Thank you all so much. And I appreciate you all for sticking around a few extra minutes with me. I'm a bit long-winded. Thank you, Mike and Stacy, for letting me present today. I very much appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Jordan. And we will post this on YouTube in the next few days. And if you like me to put anything on the meetup channel, or you can always add comments with your contact info or anything like that. But thank you all very much. And thank you, Jordan, for the great presentation. And yeah, great. So I will see everyone next time. Thanks, Jordan. Bye.
Thanks, y'all.